Good evening, everyone, and how are my little hordlings? I hope you are well, and if you are not, then maybe hanging out tonight will make your day a little bit better. And tonight we are going to be talking about how to redefine consistency through the neurodivergent lens. And in this episode of Druid's Wisdom, if my brain is cooperating today, which I think it might cooperate today. We'll see. More talking, no games. We might play some games afterwards, but tonight is a Druid's Wisdom night. So, with that, I would like to talk about consistency. Consistency, I don't know her. I don't know her, but... You don't know her, but? Oh, no. But yes. Consistency. What is consistency? What does consistency mean to you? I know a lot of people probably strive for a version of consistency that may not be realistic, because we are trying to be consistent within a neurotypical lens and not a neurodivergent one. And so... Oh, the wisdom! Yeah. I can't help that my... You know what's really consistent with you guys? Is your horniness. That's what's consistent with all of you. My fluctuating capacities don't allow for consistency ever, and I hate it. I think that is where we can actually really approach the conversation topic. And I should probably take the music away, because the YouTubes will not like the fact that Zelda was just playing. So we're gonna have to restart that. But hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Druid's Wisdom. And we are talking about consistency and how to redefine consistency in the neurodivergent lens, so we do not try to continue to be consistent through the neurotypical lens. And someone mentioned that their fluctuating capacities make it impossible for them to be consistent, and they hate it. And that is something that we are, I think, all can relate to in a lot of different ways, because there is this expectation to be the same every day, essentially. Like, we have to show up every single day the same way, no matter what. So if we are talking to a friend, we have to talk to that friend every day, or we have to talk to that friend consistently to maintain that friendship. Or if we are working on a project, we have to work a consistent number of hours every single day on that project. Or anything that we're striving for, it has to be a daily thing, or a certain amount of hours. We set this arbitrary goal of consistency for ourselves, and if we don't meet that, then we just feel guilty, we feel ashamed, we feel like we're failing, and that is why we need to redefine what consistency actually is. And I would really like you to consider and look at, what does consistency mean to you? What does that look like for you as an individual? And if you have a struggle when it comes to fluctuating capacities, then that is a factor of your consistency. That is a something that you need to include as a variable of like, well, today I don't have the same energy as I did yesterday. You know, and I need to factor that into where I can apply my energy. I'm a liquid, but sometimes a gas. There we go. You know, sometimes we're a solid. Sometimes we're rock hard. Other times we're puddles. And we need to be treated as such, right? uh all of you. Anyways, so yes, look at what your consistency is and how you build a relationship with it, because um God, your conversations are throwing me off. I can't have a serious conversation with you, all of you. I mean, I can, but it can't stay serious. It can never just stay. It cannot be consistently serious. And that is a factor of this community. That's a factor of this community. Is we cannot be consistently quiet. I read I will be quiet, and I was like, we can't be consistently quiet. You're all loud. Anyways, you don't have to worry about being quiet. Like, be yourselves. This is part of the whole thing, right? Like, I like the engagement. I like the conversation. Even though sometimes you guys break my brain sometimes, or derail my brain. The thought train derails, and there are no survivors. Because all of you are intrusive thoughts, as in THOTS. But yeah, so getting back on track, we need to kind of figure out, like, what does it mean to be consistent? You know, am I going to be horny today like I was yesterday, or am I going to be behave this time? You know, am I going to accomplish this task today, or am I going to rest? You know, am I going to, you know, do the dishes today, or am I not going to? What does it look like to be consistent? Am I going to be sociable today, or am I not going to be? And if I'm not social today, how is that going to impact my relationships? Do the people in my life understand that even if I don't reach out to them or respond to them or contact them, that I still care about them? And I think that's the standards that we have to set. Like, we have to communicate in different ways when it comes to our level of consistency. Where the challenges, really start happening is in, like, the workforce, making money, making a living, that kind of thing. That's where it's really difficult, because we have to be consistent when we're working, especially if we're working a job for other people. You know, and that is where the, like, mental beating up, where that can happen, of like, oh, I'm not meeting the same standards as my coworkers, that kind of thing. That can seriously hinder our ability to do stuff, because we get into this, thought loop of, oh, I'm not good enough, or I can't be consistent, so it's impossible for me to do this. When in reality, we just need the right accommodations to where we can be consistent. Being consistent is acknowledging when you need to rest so that you continue to be consistent. I don't know, my AuDHD brain is like, must do or else, and I need to give myself grace. Exactly. And I think that's where we really have to take a look at what consistency is for us, because a lot of us probably have that all or nothing mindset. Like, we have to do it. Like, I need to do it all or I do nothing. And that is where we really need to work on, and like how we can help ourselves with being more consistent when it comes to how we approach things, right? Like, you know, instead of doing it all, like how do we break things down into smaller, more obtainable things? How do we move forward? Just because we don't see a lot of progress doesn't mean and zero progress is being made. And like that can affect our ability to be consistent. You know, because like I'm a person that is doing a million things, right? Like I think that is something that we can all relate to in some degree of. We're always constantly adding more and more to our plate. We're always kind of overloading ourselves. And I've done that in the past to my detriment, where I failed and crashed and blew up and I let people down and I wasn't able to be consistent. And honestly, I didn't know why, right? Like, I made a commitment and I was not able to follow through on it. I wanted to. I was like really excited about doing the thing. But then all of a sudden, when it comes time to follow through on my commitment, I wasn't able to do it. And of course, that, the people involved were obviously upset and let down. And I had to learn what my limitations are so I can understand how I can be consistent in my day-to-day life. How can I show up in a way that's authentic to me, and so I'm not negatively impacting the people around me. And that also comes with the fact that I have to understand that there are going to be people that I'm not going to be able to work with, or I'm not going to be able to do exciting things with, because their expectations of me is higher than what I am capable of meeting. And that doesn't make me less. That doesn't make me inferior or bad or anything like that. That is me acknowledging my needs and understanding my capacity to do things. Now, there might be a period where, as I develop more capacity, that I can do more. But, I have to be realistic with myself right now. It's like, what can I realistically accomplish? You know, can I have a meeting every single day working on a different project? Probably not. Can I do 3 different projects at once? Maybe. Maybe. It just depends on the workload, right? It's so easy to get frustrated with not being able to consistently do things we feel are important, like eating healthy and exercising, so it makes us want to give up altogether. But even doing it some is better than none at all. 100%. There's actually, when it comes, like, going back to like the exercise and where that is where a lot of people struggle with consistency, is eating right and exercising. There was actually a recent study that came out that even increasing your movement by like 2 to 3 minutes a day has significant health impact. Like, it you don't actually need to up the bar when it comes to exercise as much as you think you need to. Now, if you have bigger goals, like for me, I want to drop at least 30 pounds, you know, and that is a big goal for me. Like 30 pounds is a pretty hefty goal, but like, how can I show up every day, or how can I show up in a way to where I can do that? What is realistic for me to be able to lose 30 pounds? And so, like, I look at how I can apply the strategies I need to to be able to lose that weight? Is it realistic for me to ask myself to go to the gym 5 nights a week when I haven't been going at all? You know, and it's not a realistic thing to ask myself. Is it realistic to ask myself to go once a week? Yes. Is it realistic to ask myself that I can find 10 minutes out of my day to stretch, to do some movement, to get my body going? You know, is it realistic to ask myself to get up and walk around? Just to find different points in my day to add movement to where like I can get my body used to exercise and actually doing more than what I am now. You know? And like, yeah, so it's important to understand like to what degree do you need to make changes? Start with diet changes first or other baby steps. Honestly, like diet change, like yes, diet changes does have one of the greatest impacts when it comes to weight loss. And I don't want to get too specific on like weight loss in general. But when we're talking about like food consistency, you know, in eating, you know, that's a very touchy subject when it comes to ADHDers and autistic people when it comes to eating consistent, because there's so many different potential eating disorders and things like that that are tied to it. So I don't want to speak too much on that. But for me personally, what I've been doing is eating what I want and then substituting what I need. So if I have like a burger, I can still have that burger, but maybe I use like lower calorie bread, or maybe I have a sweet potato instead of fries. You know, maybe I, you know, add a small salad. Like it's taking the meals that you enjoy eating and then adding things to it or substituting a few things that are healthier choices for you, that might be lower calorie, that might be, you know, better for you, and like increasing your protein and your fiber intake, because both protein and fiber take more energy to burn. So you end up burning more calories by just digesting. So when we get into like the whole like exercise and weight loss stuff, like you're like going to the gym is actually a very small factor in that. But that's not really the subject of the conversation, but that's something that we can talk about at another point when it comes to like understanding our bodies and like how we can be more consistent in taking care of it, is like truly understanding like what are the important things that you need to do to take care of your body. And so instead of like how do I be consistent in taking care of myself, it's okay, I need to add a bit of movement to my day to day. So like for me, I work from home. I don't have a lot of opportunities to move. So I take my dog for a walk. Even adding that is adding a healthy benefit. You know? So I can go to the gym, but the gym is actually the last thing that I add into my day instead of the first thing. You know? And it's important to understand like the the stuff that's actually going to help you, instead of pressuring yourself to have unrealistic goals. And I think that's a common theme when it comes to like trying to be more consistent as ADHD and autistic people, is we pressure ourselves to put unrealistic goals and expectations on ourselves because we feel like we should be able to do something, that we, you know, that we have to do it a certain way, you know, and if we don't do it this certain way, then we're wrong. And that's not really like how things work. We have to figure out what works for us as an individual. Um, I say go back to step. go back a step even farther and start with mental conversation you have, starting with the baby step of telling yourself, I care about my body enough to make healthier choices. Yeah, and I think, you know, we can just be like, I just want to take care of myself. And how can I take care of myself? How can I best take care of me in this moment? And like, going for a walk is taking care of yourself. And there's a lot of conversation around that because there's mental health, struggles where maybe we don't are not in the mindset to want to take care of ourselves. But that's where we have to, you know, accept that we need certain things in our lives to feel better, even if we hate doing it in that moment. It's like I'm going for a stupid walk for my stupid mental health. Like that's one of those things that we have to acknowledge that, hey, maybe, I can make some changes to improve my life. Like I was really adamant on cutting out like sodas. And for years I was actually only drinking water. And I say like I got to the point where it was just like natural for me. Like water was just like, okay, I only have water. But like there was some joy that was taken out of my day. Right? Like there was just some like I was missing some happiness. And so instead of like shaming myself for drinking soda, I just got Dr. Pepper Zero. Like I got some 0 calorie soda, and the Dr. Pepper Zero tastes fine. It tastes good. I just recently had one blow up in my fridge because it got too cold and froze and blew up. But that's just like a side note. But anyways, but yeah, like so, like instead of like okay, instead of saying I'm gonna completely cut sugar out of my diet, like I'm going to replace like Coke with Coke Zero. Like find ways to make replacements and stuff like that. But um and that's how I can be more consistent in taking care of myself. Let me scroll up a bit to read some of these things that people were saying. Sensory support, emotional support, executive functioning support, physical health support. Those are the ways that you try to be consistent. And I think that's honestly a great way to break it down is like, how can I be consistent with my sensory needs, my emotional needs, my executive functioning needs, and my physical health? And those are good categories to really break it down of like, because you can, maybe set a rule of like, only one of those things can be like maybe in the low part. Like maybe your emotional needs are a little bit low, but you have your sensory, your executive function, and your physical health. Maybe you're feeling a little bit down, but you can still do the other things. Like you can cycle it around. Like okay, like you're feeling pretty good emotionally. Your sensory functioning is fine, and your physical health is fine. But maybe you're a little bit struggling with the executive function, but that doesn't mean you're being inconsistent. That just means that like today your executive function needs a little bit more assistance, maybe needs a little bit more care. So it's like, taking, that's your consistency cycle instead of being like, I have to write 5,000 words every day for this novel or I'll never write this novel. Like, no, maybe you write 200 words because like you were emotionally overwhelmed and you just didn't have it in you. And so to take care of yourself emotionally, you took the time off. That kind of thing. It's finding out what works for you. Trix said, I think one of the biggest issues when it comes to understanding consistency is that it is often equated to regularity or repetition. It is not necessarily tied to those things at all. Certainly in some respects, but because we accept an institutionalized definition of consistency, we will find that we end up failing more often than not. I found that looking at consistency from an intentional perspective allows for a greater latitude with my mental and physical health, provided I'm open and honest about what I'm able to offer myself and others as well. I think that is a great way to look at it because you're right. Consistency isn't necessarily repetition. It's just like, how am I showing up every day is like, am I being authentic to myself? And am I being authentic to the people around me? Like, I'm going to be consistently honest to the people. You know, like, I'm really going to appreciate different, aspects of me as a consistent person. Doesn't mean I'm going to, you know, re- be repetitive. You try to make sure all the cups. Kitty Caitlin says, I try to make sure all those cups are at least half full. If one dips, then maybe I know that's what to focus on. Yeah. So yeah, when you're talking about, your emotional needs, your physical, your sensory, and the fourth one that I can't remember off the top of my head, but we were just talking about it. When you recognize that those dip, you can focus on that instead of pushing yourself past like your own boundaries. Um, and that's important to understand. Um, and the aspartame in Coke Zero is nothing to be afraid of. Artificial sweeteners is nothing really to be afraid of because you would have to drink a just ridiculous amount of Coke Zero for it to have any negative effect on you. Like, there are going to be people out there that are going to try to scare tactics in you, and that like aspartame is this terrible, horrible thing, but like, not really. And this is not just me spouting BS. This is stuff that I've learned from people that like know the science and understanding, and are not scare tacting you into buying some other BS stuff. But again, this is also personal choice. So like, if you're like, I don't want to drink Coke Zero, that's fine. Um, but um, also, like someone mentioned that they can't do diet drinks. Like Mary said, I can't do diet drinks. Coke Zero and Dr Pepper Zero are not like diet drinks. Like, it's not diet Dr Pepper or diet Coke. They taste different. Because I was hesitant to do the zero because like the diet drinks were never that great. But Dr Pepper Zero is fine. How much of a donut to straighten my hair? Oh gosh, it would take forever to straighten my hair, but I would not be able to do that. Oh hey, we're gonna have ads, so we're gonna take a minute. It didn't let me know, but yes, while we're having ads, um, you could do it. All right, Diet Mountain Dew isn't that bad. Also, low levels of dopamine and serotonin also have serious side effects. Yeah, Grim, those are some badass curls. Thank you. They're getting long. You wish there was a vanilla Coke Zero. Yeah, vanilla Coke is good. I'm more partial to cherry Coke than anything, and cherry Pepsi. Cherry Pepsi is like really the only Pepsi product that like I wouldn't say the only Pepsi product. I'm pretty impartial about my like sodas, my pops, my Cokes. Mm. Hello, Grim. How are you doing today? You like most Dr Peppers? Yeah, except for Mr. Pibb. You just can't trust the person that can't complete their doctorate. Hello, Colonel. How are you doing? And we are back from ads. And we've been talking about consistency and how can we reframe consistency from a neurodivergent lens. And I want to reframe, like, not reframe, but revisit what something that Pale Lady said was like being consistent in your boundaries and communication. And I think that's important. I think those are areas that we can always strive for consistency. And so one of those questions that we can ask ourselves is how can we be consistent in our day-to-day lives without pushing past our boundaries? Like, what are things that we can do to actually help ourselves maintain that consistency without sacrificing ourselves or without hurting ourselves? And that's really important because that's actually going into some of like the people pleasing tendencies that we may have. Um, we have um, that struggle where we tend to go above and beyond for other people, or we get really super excited for different things, um, and we just like end up forgetting to take care of ourselves, and that's not a healthy thing that we need to do. So like, how can we be consistent without pushing past our boundaries? Saying no, saying no, saying no. Yes, but how do we say no? What do you, like saying no to people is uncomfortable. Some people saying no, like, I mean, for me, I've gotten pretty good at saying no or recognizing like, oh, I'm really excited to do this thing, but unfortunately, I just don't have the capacity right now. You know, um, I don't have the energy to do that. I don't have the space to do that. It's more like a thing of me and it's not a thing of them, right? Like that's one thing we don't want to make the other people feel like they are a burden or hindrance to us. It's just more of like my plate's full right now. I would really love to participate in that, but I can't. Go away, or I shall taunt you a second time. Yes, that's another one that we can also employ. I do that when I meet new people. I end up overwhelming myself just trying to make a good impression. That's a good one to chew on. Yeah. I think that's a good one to chew on of yeah. How many of you actually, you know, start abandoning your boundaries when there's new people involved because you want that person to like you? Because you want them to see that you are, you know, a good friend or that you can, have space and time for them and that you are afraid that they're not going to accept you if you are too busy or refuse doing things with them too much. Yeah. Like if you just say no, well, maybe there's that fear that they're not going to ask you again. That's a really, like, that's a real fear that we have. Like we have to understand that we're limited in our capacities. And that's where the communication comes in. The how do we communicate a no? Um, practice saying no with friends. It's a thing my cuddly party friends do before everyone starts cuddling. They say no to all the consent questions, even if they actually do want it, just to get over the nerves of saying no. That's actually not a bad idea. You know, sometimes we have to restrict ourselves and get that anxiety out of our system to shake it off. I think that's a good way to approach it. In especially in a safe environment, if you have friends that you can, you know, practice saying no. and experience the feeling that you have when you say no. You know, and that's important to understand. You know, like important to feel. And like it's also important to be able to say no to someone and see how they react. Because if you say no to them and they react poorly, then maybe that's an assessment thing to where you can realize that maybe this person's not a good friend for you or a good fit for you. You know? Tricks, it's sometimes just a matter of being performative as a means of survival. If I'm liked, I am safe. If I'm accepted, I won't be alone. If I have friends, I'm not perceived as other, all of which are tied to survival. I think that's tied to trauma, which is part of survival, yes. But it's like, we are community beings. Like I'm very much in the passion of like we need community. Community is a very important aspect of mental health and growth, and without it, it's really really hard. The flip side to that is it's okay if you are alone temporarily, because that just means you probably need to focus on yourself a little bit and to find the people that are actually going to be there for you instead of force fitting yourself into a space that you don't necessarily need to be in. You know? And that's the masking aspect of it, because, you know, oftentimes as autistic people especially, we'll say we like things just so we can fit in with the people around us, and turns out we don't actually like that thing. We don't actually enjoy doing XYZ, and so we end up, you know, pretending that we like this thing just so we can be accepted, just so we can have something to talk to someone about. And it can be really hard. Like, it's not an easy thing to experience the fact that we might be alone, that maybe we aren't liked, maybe we aren't accepted, and that's okay. It's okay that someone doesn't like us. It's okay that, you know, we don't have someone right there in the moment. Definitely not Catwoman. Yeah, my newest friend, we had a conversation about our boundaries and how we got close real quick, that we do get burned out and respect our space, but know we're close. That's awesome. That's really good to be able to do that. Like, that you can, you know, recognize that, like, oh, there's this hyperfixation happening. There's this, like, I really want to be, you know, friends, and I really want this close relationship with you, and we're gonna probably spend every waking moment for the next month or something like that together. But, you know, but we have to realize that maybe that's not realistic, and then we have to set some boundaries. Pale Lady, what about the fear of appearing inconsistent when going through a season of self-learning? Doesn't matter. Appear that way. That's one of those things, like, that if you're being consistent with yourself by going through that self-learning, by going through that process, then it doesn't matter what you look like to the people around you, because the people that care about you and understand that that's what you're going through are going to understand and care that you're going through that, and they're going to show up in a way that is consistent to you. Consistency is not just our responsibility, it's like other people's responsibility as well. Like, we need people to be consistent with us, and like, I think it's okay to ask for consistency of love and affection from someone. How that love and affection looks can be different depending on the situation. You know, that love and affection can be spending time with someone, or that love and affection can be understanding that we're not going to spend time together, but we still care about each other. And that love and affection isn't going to fade just because we aren't interacting as much. And I think that's where we can approach consistency in a more accurate way. It's not a I'm showing up every day. It's I'm going to be consistently the same with you. So no matter what, you can expect the same behaviors from me. So if you come to me with an issue, I am going to be consistent in how I give you that space to have that issue. Yeah. And if I come to you with an issue, I am hoping that you have the same consistency of giving me space to have that issue. So it is one of those things that, like, if we don't communicate, now that's the thing, is that we have to communicate. We have to do our side of the work, right? Like, we have to pull our weight in the communication aspect of, hey, I care about you, I love you, I'm here, we're friends, whatever, but I am going through XYZ, or I feel really drained, I don't really have a lot of spoons, I don't have a lot of social battery in me, so we may not see each other very much, or we may not talk to each other very much, but I want you to know that I do care about you, and that it's okay for you to reach out to me every now and then, or it's okay for you to continue messaging me or talking to me, or whatever boundaries that you want to set with people while you're going through that healing process to where you can't, like, be physically present. You mean they shouldn't read our minds? I know, right? Yeah. Definitely not Catwoman. The wonderful thing is that there are people out there that will accept you fully and love you. Exactly, 100%. There are people out there that will do that for you. I'm scrolling through. Yeah, people that don't care can dive in a deep, really big hole. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Like, being able to, and I think that's the consistency aspect of it, is like, you know, is talking to, is like just communicating. That's communicating. I think that's the one area that I think we should strive for consistency. You know, is just being honest, being open with what we're going through, having a little bit of vulnerability. And that can be hard. It's not an easy thing. And, like, you know, it's okay that we make mistakes. Um, and I think that's where, it's the consistency of giving space to people to make mistakes. I think we should never expect perfection from people. Like, as soon as we expect people to be perfect, or expect people to always be the same, to never make a mistake, that's where we go wrong. That's where we abandon people too early. That's where we, um, make judgments that are not accurate. Because, we have to recognize behaviors in other people and ourselves. So, like, one thing that a lot of people struggle with is, like, rejection sensitivity. And we can use a person's consistency to help us process rejection sensitivity. What is someone's behaviors up until this moment? So, like, have they been consistently a good person to you? Like, have they been consistently, compassionate and understanding and caring? But, like, right now you're feeling like they hate you for some reason. Like, is that consistent with the information that you have of this person? And that way we can kind of battle those, rejection sensitivity thoughts and help us regulate those things. So instead of just succumbing to the mental struggle, we can help ourselves. We can be better at our relationships, and maybe even approaching people more honestly of like, oh hey, I'm feeling this certain way, can you help me like process this, like is this true, did you mean this, did you mean it, did you intend it this way, that kind of stuff. It feels hard when being open feels a lot like trauma dumping. I mean, there's a line between trauma dumping and just being vulnerable. Like trauma dumping is like I'm gonna go into detail on why I'm feeling this way, without you consenting to that detail. But being vulnerable is I have these emotional experiences due to hardships or due to my past or something along that nature of like, you know, I am realizing that on an emotional level when it comes to relationships and things like that, I can be a bit avoidant. So I struggle with avoidance in making deeper emotional connections with people. And I don't have to tell you why. But I can express like, hey, I really enjoy your presence, but I do get anxious, and my body reacts certain ways, especially in certain situations that might make me feel exposed, or they might make me feel trapped sometimes. Like certain experiences might make me feel trapped, and like my response to that is going to want to run, but I want you to know this so it's not your problem, and that like that you are aware that these things happen. Like, hey, I have these experiences and I want you to understand that like I'm working through them, or these are the things that we can do. Different on Catwoman. I think it's when you assume other people speak your language or judge them on how others interacted with you before. Yes, the judging people on how you've been treated before. That's a trauma response of like I've had this bad experience with XYZ person or people, in the past, so that's just going to be a consistent thing forever. And that can be really hard to overcome, but we can work through that, and we can learn to trust people. Um, but and how we do that is by being more consistent with our boundaries and how we show up and how we approach people, and not how we make people approach us. It's how we communicate with them. Of like, I get anxious around this type of stuff, you know, and if you breach this boundary, then I'm going to respond this way. Like, this is a boundary I want. This is how I want to be interacted with, and if you breach that, then I'm going to leave because I'm not going to feel safe, and they have to respect that. And that's where we can protect ourselves from those repeated things from happening. Sanity. If we want to have grace shown to us, we need to do the same for others. Yes, indeed. Kelly Blom. I'm consistently bad at communicating. Luckily, my bestie will still understands me and helps me remind me to use my words. And that's great, And that's the thing is like you can even communicate. Hey, I'm bad at communicating. I might need some support here. And then it's up to your friends or people around you to accept that, to whether or not that they're willing to put in that effort for you. And like, that's a thing, we can do that. And hello, right, sister, and hello to everyone else that has popped in while we were having this discussion. Um, Sorry, I have not said hi. Have we derailed? This feels like a consistent thing for us. Yes, we tend to derail, but it's okay. Sanity, and then yeah, Sanity asking like when it comes to trauma dumping or not, like You can ask like, hey, if you want to know the why, like why I experienced this, then I can tell you the why. But we give people the choice to want to receive the more information. That quote was good, but I forgot to clip it. What quote? What quote? I don't remember what I said. Gotta run. Love you all. All right, Trix. Have a good one. There's a train and it's been derailed. Chugga, 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 chugga. Mix it up got me. All right, cool. It is a consistent thing for me to not understand, not remember what I said. You can go back. You can go to the VOD and clip it, but that's a lot of work. That's a lot of executive functioning. Um, but yeah, I think when it comes to consistency, like there's a lot of different aspects of how we can approach it, and like it's a lot more of just like how we can be consistent with ourselves, how we can be consistent with other people, but it's not necessarily like how I'm going to repeat the same thing over and over, but more of I'm going to always offer the same love and affection, or I'm always going to offer the same level of compassion or patience with people. And I have a boundary within that of like I have so much patience, and that when the boundary of that my patience is up, that's when I'm going to react to something. And like that creates consistency, that creates trust, that creates healthy relationships. And I think one thing I really like, the last thing I really want to ask too, and have you all ponder and pontificate on. I like the word pontificate, so I like to use it. Um, but is where is the line between commitment and self care? Because we have to understand that sometimes we commit to things, and maybe we cannot follow through on the commitment, and sometimes we have to make a decision. Do we disappoint the person that we committed to, or disappoint whatever, not follow through on the commitment? Or do we follow through on it despite our self-care needs? You know, and I think that's a really hard one to discuss, because I never want anyone to feel like they have to sacrifice themselves for things. But part of consistency is follow through. If you make a commitment to someone or something, and you can't follow through on it, I think there is space for, hey, I know I made this commitment, but I'm coming to realize that I actually don't have the capacity to follow through on this commitment. And that can be really hard to say to someone. And it's, that's where the consistency of love and compassion and grace comes in, I think, of like, if we make a commitment to our friend and they're really excited and they're anticipating us to follow through, and then we can't. Yeah, we're going to disappoint that person. Yeah, we're probably going to hurt their feelings. But we're being true to ourselves, we're being consistent with ourselves, and then they have that opportunity to be consistent and true to how they feel about us. Maybe they might need some time to heal, or whatever, depending on the level of commitment. But like, I think that's more honest and more consistent. I think there might be some times that we can be like, hey, I made this commitment to you, I'm going to follow through on this commitment, but I do want you to know where I'm at currently, and that I may not be able to do more than this commitment, right? Like, maybe there's a potential for like more things afterwards or whatever. Or maybe the commitment needs to change a little bit of like what my capacity is within that commitment. So I think it's important to understand that it's okay to back out of a commitment if you absolutely need to. But I think it's also okay to communicate that you're going to follow through, but maybe let the people know that maybe the quality of the final product or whatever it is may not be up to par, may not be as um, good as you thought it would be because of self care needs. So like, there's a lot of, and I think that might play into our perfectionism as well. If we overwhelm ourselves with perfectionistic ideals of like, I absolutely have to follow through on this commitment to this like impossible standard. Like maybe we just need to lower that standard or communicate how we're feeling and understand what the standard that they're expecting. Because maybe we're up here, like our standard of commitment of like we're gonna go hardcore and we're gonna follow through with whatever it is, but like they're down here, like they weren't expecting that, and you just need to communicate so you can kind of like meet, you know. So it's important to understand limitations and to be true to yourself. And I think that's the best way to really kind of like understand and wrap up what consistency is, and it's being consistent with yourself and how you interact with the world around you. So that it's kind of a shorter topic, but it's an important one because we can get wrapped up in a lot of different places when it comes to consistency, and we just need to focus on, I think what Jakai just said, making your commitment to self care via self care and discovery, to making that commitment to yourself. Being compassionate to yourself, being kinder to yourself, making that commitment and being consistent through it. You know, things that you can follow through on. But yeah, it's okay to be inconsistent in the grand scheme of things when it comes to maybe you don't go out every weekend with friends, but we can be consistent in how we communicate and how we give space to people. We touched on this earlier. Know where our limits are and tailor our commitments to them so that we can set ourselves up for consistency. I think that is a great way to really just wrap it up. Like, yeah, know your limits so you can tailor your commitments and set yourself up for that consistency. And it might take some time to learn what your limits are, but I think the sooner that we can gain that acceptance that we do have limitations, the better it is going to be for us. And honestly, we're getting ads. um, and honestly, like we just need to like be kinder to ourselves and start there. I think if we start there, then we'll set ourselves up for consistency. We'll set ourselves up for feeling better and being able to set better boundaries. But with that, I am going to end the Druid's Wisdom conversation. I'm going to take a quick break on Twitch. But for the YouTube people, I hope you all had a wonderful, got some value out of this, and thank you so much for watching. We'll be talking more about just different topics every Monday night at 6 p.m. Central, and thank you so much for being here. Bye. I almost forgot to say bye. Bye. Anyway.